Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Nebraska heading into 2025. It's a fascinating program because for the first time since Matt Rhule has taken over Nebraska, it feels like this football team's kind of flying under the radar going into the 2025 year. I mean, you go back 12 months ago, this was one of the hotter teams to talk about in the offseason with Matt Rhule going into year two, Dylan taking over the offense. I feel like this year, there's not a lot of people in the national media that's talking about this Nebraska football team. And I think what's so unique about it is Matt Rhule going into year three. I think this is the best version, or at least very well could be the best version of Nebraska that we've seen under Matt Rhule. Now, many of y'all know this. I have some Nebraska fans in the family, kind of talking to how other Nebraska fans feel about going into 2025. I think the consensus feeling is there's a lot to be excited about. There are a lot of reasons that Nebraska surprises a lot of people in 2025, but there are also, you would probably say, significant question marks on this roster as well. Now, what are the reasons to be excited for Nebraska? Well, if everything comes together, why does Nebraska surprise a lot of people in 2025? That's the conversation I want to get into before we do. And as always, to Nebraska fans, number one, as we always say, we can't thank the Nebraska fans enough. Y'all were one of the first real fan bases to start listening to the boys, start showing support to the boys. So y'all, this Nebraska program in general, y'all know this kind of holds a special place in my heart. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it now. Let's start with one of the more popular talking points, and that is year three under Matt Rhule. This is the year that it all comes together at every spot he's been. Now, it's one thing just to say that, right? And I feel like that's what you kind of hear when people talk about Nebraska in the national media. It's year three with Matt Rhule, they're automatically going to be good. Well, I think it's more important to get into the conversation of why Matt Rhule has success in year three. And I think a large part of it is he wants to run a developmental program. And he's been very vocal about that ever since he took this job at Nebraska. You see a lot of other head coaches come into a program and try to revamp it in the portal immediately. They might have some success year one, year two. The question is, hey, is that sustainable? We're going to kind of find out with Coach Prime in Colorado over the next couple of years. Matt Rhule's been very, very vocal that we're not going to do that. We're going to build this program the right way in which I think we can have sustained success at Nebraska. Now, why is year three always the year? Because he likes to take a lot of developmental prospects. We talk about this all the time in the summer months with Nebraska on the recruiting trail. They bet on athletes. They don't always land the best pure football players coming out of high school. They bet on the athletes. They make them good football players. Normally that takes a year or two for that to kind of happen. Well, this is kind of what you're looking at. Like year three, you got a bunch of really good athletes on this football team. Can they turn out to be good football players in the 2025 year? Historically, that has been the case for Nebraska. Now, the biggest storyline, at least in my opinion, is not year three under Matt Rhule. It's Coach Dana's impact on Dylan. And we kind of already saw it. And I think what's so unique is that I think you saw some steps with Dylan when Dana took over the offense, which to me was kind of surprising. You're talking about a coach that in the middle of the season, I should say, comes into the program, spends time learning the playbook, and then all of a sudden calls the offense for the last couple of weeks of the season. Going into year two, it should be much, much better, especially when you consider that like Dana Holgerson's offense and what he wants to do, it's different from what Coach Sat wanted to do. And so you're going to see some different stuff with Dana going into kind of his first full off season running this Nebraska offense. Now, I think what fires me up the most about what Dana can do for Dylan is let's give him some easier stuff more routinely. You saw Dylan's completion percentage go very much in the right direction when Dana took over. You saw the running backs get very involved in the passing attack. You love that you have a quarterback that can make all the throws, can make legitimate high level throws to allow you to compete at the highest level of the sport. You have that quarterback in Dylan. Do we want to have him do that every single game, every single play of every single game? It's probably the better way of saying it. No, you probably don't. I mean, every good quarterback, I think it can do the easy right and then make the high level stuff when they need to. And I think that's what you want to see more from Dylan in year two. Doing the simple stuff a little bit more at a higher level, getting out of the pocket a little bit, getting himself out of trouble, getting the football out quicker. We know Dylan has every tool in the toolkit. Now you just want to see his step in year two. I think you have a significantly better offensive coordinator. I think you have a quarterback in Dylan who's, look, he's only getting better going into year two. He ain't going to take a step back from what he saw in 2024. And I think he's got a dramatically better supporting cast around him. Right. I think Emmett Johnson as that true running back one, that's huge. Like Dana Holgerson felt this way too, because I was looking back at the numbers. They were playing the wrong running back. Dante Donald was kind of the running back one for Nebraska in the first half of the season. When Dana took over the offense, it quickly switched to Emmett Johnson, who I thought was the better running back. The numbers certainly back that up as well. Now, one question you have is, are we deep enough in the running back room? I think Emmett Johnson can be one of the better backs in the Big Ten. Do we have enough running backs that we trust to run the rock is probably a question that a lot of Nebraska fans have. Wide receiver room, by far, best wide receiver room that Matt Rhule has had at Nebraska. And it was solid last year, but solid is probably the highest I would go. Now, I think this year, I mean, you look at the three starting wide receivers in Dane Key, Nezaeh Hunter, and Ja'Cory Barney, one of the better wide receiver trios that I think you might see in this conference. Like, I know Dane Key is a legitimate difference maker coming from the SEC, and quite frankly, he's a perfect fit for what Dylan wants to do, pushing the ball down the field. Nezaeh Hunter, all around, very solid wide receiver that's still getting better. Like, here's the difference between Isaiah Hunter and, maybe some of the other wide receivers like a Jamal Banks or Isaiah Nayor last year. Isaiah Hunter's only getting better. Like, Jamal Banks and Nayor coming into Nebraska last year were probably not going to be much better than what they were at their previous stops. Hunter's a young cat that's getting better. And then we all know what Ja'Cory Barney can do. And then you have two true freshmen coming in, Cortez Mills and Isaiah, that I think are going to play. And we've seen historically that wide receivers in whatever conference you want to look at, they can come in immediately and have an impact on the offense. So you got Dylan going into year two, significantly better offensive coordinator with better players around him. And I would argue, look, the deepest offensive line Nebraska has had. Now, do I have questions about this Nebraska offensive line? Yes, I absolutely do, specifically with Elijah Pritchett at left tackle. To me, outside of Dylan, Elijah Pritchett might be the most important football player on this team, because there are two scenarios that I would not be surprised to see. If we see Elijah Pritchett play 4 games, get benched, I wouldn't be all that surprised, because quite frankly, it's never been great for Elijah Pritchett playing tackle at Alabama. Now, on the flip side, if you told me Elijah Pritchett emerges as one of the best tackles in the Big Ten this year, I wouldn't be all that surprised either, because this kid is about as gifted as it gets playing tackle in the Big Ten. He's got all the physical tools. Now, can he maximize what he can be at left tackle at Nebraska? If he does, this offensive line should be good. And quite frankly, I thought the offensive line was pretty dang solid last year. Like, I thought they were moving the line of scrimmage pretty routinely. I thought they were holding up at a solid level in pass protection. I think, again, freshman quarterback Dylan, continuing to learn how to manage the pocket, get the ball out quick. I think that's going to help your offensive line be more right in 2025. Look, I think you could make the argument that every aspect of this offense gets better going into the 2025 year. In fact, I'm probably prepared to make that argument. Now, I think the biggest storyline here is the defensive line holding up. I look at the back seven for Nebraska. I think it should be solid. Like, I think you got a lot of depth. I think you got a nice blend of, you made some portal additions. You have some young talent. You have some guys that can play. I think the linebacker room might be one of the more talented linebacker rooms we've seen Nebraska have in a while, and that's saying something. I think Vincent Shavers could be, an all Big Ten caliber guy. The back seven of this Nebraska defense should be pretty dang good. Look, is the defensive line good enough? Like, on paper, I don't think it is. And I think a lot of Nebraska fans probably feel the same way now, what does it need to look like? Because there is an avenue for the defensive line being good enough. Williams Harry going into year 2, 5-star prospect, does he reach his potential, and does he give you that versatile disruptor along the defensive line that can play out on the edge, that can play the 3-tech? What's Riley Van Poppel look like in year 3? Young cats like Keona Davis, Cam Lenhart, Willis McGahee coming off the edge at that jack. There are not a ton of proven guys that can play. We know Cam Lenhart can play. Elijah Judy has flashed at times, but this defensive line as a whole has a lot of question marks, including the transfer portal additions. Like we don't know. In fact, I would argue that we haven't seen the 2 transfer portal additions on the inside show that they can play Big Ten caliber football. And so there are a lot of unknowns, which is reason for concern. But there's also a pathway for this defensive line to be solid. And look, I don't think we're going to see the best defensive line in the country in 2025. I think it takes a step back from what we saw last year with guys like Ty and Nash on the inside. But can it be solid? And can it be solid enough that the enhancements at the linebacker position in the secondary maybe allow this Nebraska defense to take a step in 2025? That's kind of the question. Look, I think the offense will be the best offense we've seen in a very long time in Nebraska. What's the defense look like? Are we good enough on the defensive line to hold up in the Big Ten and compete at the highest level? That's probably the question you have. And if you get that, look, I think we're right. Maybe some people are sleeping on Nebraska. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Again, I told you I have family who are Nebraska fans, and the expectations are kind of all over the place. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.